In my last video, I went over 20 coasters that I got to re-ride this year and shot up in my rankings. Today, let's look at the dark side. For just about every coaster that I was impressed with, there was a coaster that was disappointing. This could be due to roughness, or the ride not running well, or just remembering it being better before. So let's do this. These are the 15 coasters that shot down my rankings in 2022. I only have one dishonorable mention here, and that's West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Last year, it was on the good list, but I got to ride this a few times this year, and I think the shine is wearing off. I don't know if it deserves a drop down from number 3 in the park. I still don't think Wonder Woman is as good, but I'm starting to question how good this ride really is. Number 15, Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. I know this is kind of a polarizing ride, and over my last 3 trips to Carowinds, it's been different every time. I rode it right after it opened in 2019. It was a cold and rainy day in April, and I thought it was running slow and I was really disappointed. I came back in 2021 on a hot day in July, and I found out what this thing can do when it's warmed up. I had no reason to expect it to be any different this year. Another hot day in July, riding a full train in the back row, but I was not feeling it this time. All the bite the ride had in 2021 was missing, and I felt like I was right back in 2019. Sophie felt the same way. It seemed like it was going through the motions. So, in the end, I don't know what to make of this ride. Number 14, Riddler Mindbender at Six Flags Over Georgia. I was curious to ride this with its new name, new coat of paint, and most importantly, new trains. These were designed by B&M, and I guess they're slightly more comfortable, but I don't think the old ones were bad, so not much of an upgrade. The one thing that sucked about the new trains is that they're shorter. Instead of 7 cars per train, they only have 5 cars. So some of that airtime you used to get in the back is a lot weaker now. I was never a huge fan of Mindbender, but my last ride in 2019 was pretty solid. I think these changes made the ride worse. Number 13, Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This used to be my favorite steel coaster. Then I went 11 years between rides, and in 2019 I got some weak rides. It was a cold and cloudy day, and people swear by the airtime, so I figured I need to give it a better shake. This year, I got there on a crazy hot day in the middle of July, and I definitely got a better ride, but it was nowhere near what I felt about it back in 2008. It was my first B&M Hyper. Maybe that's why I was so impressed by it, but the layout was really lacking the force you normally find on B&M Hypers. It has a great setting away from the park and through the trees, but the airtime is so weak. It was their first Hyper, which explains some of it, but Raging Bull was built in the same year, and I don't have the same complaints about force. Number 12, Thunderhead at Dollywood. Thunderhead's got a great layout. There's no wonder it's always ranked high on people's wooden coaster lists. It could use a little more airtime for my money, but it definitely achieves that out-of-control feeling that GCI is so good at. Dollywood has done a lot of work on the second half of the ride, and my only request is they do the same for the first half. That was so brutally rough in the back row, and when I moved to the front, it wasn't much better. I thought maybe it'd be like Prowler, where the front was glossy smooth and the back was rough, but no. Number 11, Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. I was always curious, what about Mako made it so good? After all, it's not much different than Candemonium, and I thought that was a pretty weak hyper. But I've always loved Mako. It may be a minor thing, kind of a nitpick, but this year I got one ride and it didn't really hit like it normally does. It has a bit of a weak ending, so it needs that first half to really be strong. Normally, I get some crazy airtime on those first big camelbacks and the speed hill, but this year, not so much. There's no way I can justify having this in my top 15 when Goliath at Over Georgia is on the outside looking in. I really hope to get back to SeaWorld again soon once Pipeline opens, and maybe the Mako that I came to know will be back. Number 10, Banshee at Kings Island. I was kinda wavering on Banshee over recent years. I loved it in 2016 and 2018, but in 2020 I wasn't feeling it, and by 2022 it was just kinda eh. I don't think it runs as rough for me as it does for others. Maybe a little bit, but nothing to complain about. If there is a rattle, it's probably because of the speed. After riding a bunch of inverts in 2022, I think Alpenguy should leapfrog Banshee on my list. That was much more impressive this year. Number 9, Timberwolf at Worlds of Fun. I look back on last year's list and that was on there also, so I guess you can say it shot down even farther, if that's possible. I thought this was one of the best in coasters after my ride in 2018. I rode in the front in 2021 and it was just savagely brutal, so I skipped the back row ride. In 2022, I decided to get that back row ride despite what it would do to my head. I thought the ride in the front wasn't very good on top of being rough, so I was hoping for at least a good ride in the back even if it beat me stupid. Well, it did beat me to a pulp and it was pretty forceless. Not the best combo. It seems like this has gotten way worse over the last 4 years and that's a shame. Number 8. Outlaw at Adventureland. I heard good things about this going into my first ride in 2021. I enjoyed that ride. I didn't think it was that rough and it had some good elements. Tornado next door was way rougher. In 2022, my opinion flipped. Tornado was the smoother ride. Outlaw really beat me up bad. It still has those 2 moments of sharp ejector, but the rest of the ride is just filler, and for whatever reason, it really hurt this time. Maybe I rode on a wheel seat, I don't really remember. 1 year should not make that much of a difference, but sometimes it does. Number 7. Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I always put this and Railblazer on the same level. They're clones, they open the same year, they both have a nice setting. I actually put Wonder Woman slightly ahead, just because my ride seemed to be a little better in the past. Now I have to split them up. My ride on Railblazer last year was perfectly pleasant. My ride on Wonder Woman this year was kinda jarring. I never knew an RMC single rail could be that rough. It kinda felt like Harley Quinn at Discovery Kingdom. It was every bit as intense as normal, but the rattle was constant and insane. It was Sophie's first ride on a single rail, and I'm lucky it didn't scare her away from the model. I had to convince her that Wonder Woman at Magic Mountain would be better, that one being brand new. I hope the park can fix this problem, and it can go back to being the smooth, breakneck experience it always has been. Number 6. Excalibur at Valley Fair. I love Gemini, I love old arrows, so I was excited to ride Excalibur last year. I got one ride in the back and I was kinda disappointed. It was pretty crazy, but it just had one pop of airtime. People said, you gotta ride the front, so in 2022, I did, and I thought the ride up there kinda sucked. It had the same moment of airtime, it just offered a less crazy ride. If you're riding with a first timer, maybe try the front. I wanted the craziest ride possible, so I went around for another ride in the back. It was definitely more out of control, but also a lot rougher. I came away thinking that Excalibur just isn't that good, no matter where you ride it. Number 5. SheiKra at Busch Gardens, Tampa. First, I gotta give it credit. It was crazy rough the first time I rode it back in 2018. That is no longer a problem. I rode this twice and it was perfectly smooth. The reason it's on this list is because of the layout. I didn't really notice it the first time around. I think what really spoiled it was having ridden Griffin earlier in that week. Everything about Griffin is better. It seems like that was the deluxe model and SheiKra was the base model. It kinda makes sense. SheiKra is 2 years older. This is just pretty basic. Fun, but basic. And needs to move down on my overall list. Number 4. Grizzly at King's Dominion. I never had a strong opinion about this ride, and maybe that was a good thing. I rode in 2008, but do I remember it? Not one bit. I rode again in 2018 to see what the hype was all about, and I came away pretty indifferent. It was an average old wooden coaster. Then I rode it in 2022, and the track felt about 1000% rougher. There's no way it was anywhere near that rough in 2018. This year, it was one of the most brutal wooden coasters I've ever ridden. The park just announced it's getting a retrack for next year, so maybe if I get back, this will be on the good list. For now, I gotta knock it down. Number 3. Mystery Mine at Dollywood. Kinda like Banshee, the first couple times I rode this, I was very impressed. My ride in 2018 actually made me put this up in my top 50. My ride in 2019 wasn't so great, and then after 2022, I think I've given up on this ride. First, the new section of outdoor track isn't very good. I like the old layout better. Honestly, I thought the ride was pretty much trash till the very end. The final lift, the last drop, and the inversions are great, but the rest is just really pointless and not enjoyable. This is still popular and it's very well themed, but if Dollywood was looking to replace this with something better, I would be all for it. Number 2. Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. This RMC's pitch is very simple. You're gonna get a short ride, but it's gonna be insane. I love a long ride, but I still love Twisted Cyclone for being so powerful. This was the case in 2018, 2019, and 2021. So here I am, back again in 2022, expecting more of the same. We did get there right after opening, but that never seemed to matter in the past. It gave a strong ride no matter when I rode it. Me and Sophie rode this twice, and I don't know what happened to it this year. On both rides, it was missing its bite. I was left with a short RMC that didn't have its normal sharp ejector, or its snappy whip. I'm curious to see if anyone else out there had the same experience. It was very weird, and not something I was just imagining. I've ridden this enough to know how it normally runs. Number 1. New Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. Just like Banshee and Mystery Mine, here's another ride that, over the years, seems to be slipping. New Texas Giant still has a lot of strong elements, including the first drop and a couple sharp airtime hills before the mid-course. But it seems like the second half is getting slower and slower, and the train seems to rattle around a lot more than it used to. Maybe these are related. If they fix the rattle, maybe it'll run faster. I'd love to see it. But the last few times I've gotten off New Texas Giant, I've been kinda disappointed. Maybe the new RMCs are spoiling me. This year, I had amazing rides on Twisted Timbers, Lightning Rod, and Iron Gwazi. New Texas Giant, being the original, seems to be falling further behind, and it's gonna take a hit on my rankings. That's all for the coasters that shot down my list in 2022. If you have any thoughts on these rides, let me know in the comments below. If you rode these recently, was your experience the same, or do you think I'm crazy? When it comes to bad rides, there can be so many factors, like weather, time of day, and personal factors. Like, are you dehydrated from walking 4 miles to the park? That seemed to be my problem this year, so it could have affected my experience. Before you go, don't forget to drop a like. And if you're new here and love coaster content, please give me a sub. Click the card above or the link below for the 20 coasters that shot up my list this year. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you're a baseball fan like I am. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.